introduce everybody. Welcome again to another Thursday session. We are co-hosting this with the Nebraska Languages Initiative and the Malika Foundation to discuss culture as it relates to the K-12 classroom. So all K-12 educators and even post-secondary educators are welcome to attend as we discuss this topic in terms of how do we approach cultures that are directly taught in the classroom, and how do we respectfully approach the culture of those we teach in the classroom. So today's speaker is Dorann Avey, who has a title of Digital Learning Director and an unofficial title of all-around great person at the Nebraska Department of Education. I will go ahead and let Dorann introduce herself more specifically in just a moment. But before I do, I will let you know that we will pause periodically for questions. Please record your questions in the chat. I will monitor those questions and then I will present those questions periodically. You will see occasionally my camera go dark as I am going back and forth between chat and the presentation, but I'm always here. I'm always following what you have to ask and what you have to share. Please feel free to participate as much as you can in this discussion. All right, Dorann.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here today. I'm thrilled to be sharing some of this content with you today. And luckily, I'm glad we're pre-K 20 because there's a lot of 16 to 20 things that I want to share. And so we'll take a look. I'm going to share my screen. I do have a presentation that I would recommend that you copy and keep, because I did go ahead and go to links ahead of time, and in case we run short on time, their links are in there and you can take a look at some specific things as you see fit. So I'll get you that bit.ly here in just a second, but I do recommend that you do that. So before we get started though, just a tad bit about me. I don't really like to talk about me, but I would love to hear about who's all here, and I'll try to target some searches and some materials for the audience themselves. And so if you just in the chat could mention who your professional role, your title, grade level, subject, just something that might help me know what you're kind of looking for for today. So I am actually Dorann Avey. I'm the Digital Learning Director, as Stephanie said, at the NDE now. Prior to that, for 17 years, I worked for Lincoln Public Schools as a business and information technology teacher, as well as a department chair and coordinator. And then I have been to the, let's see, with the NDE now 5 years. So let me, I'm going to do that, Stephanie. I'll make sure we're watching the participants here. Awesome. So we got some world language, dual language, OPS, wonderful, French. Okay, I got some French things bookmarked. So even if we run short of time, I promise you will get a bunch of French things. US history, wonderful, wonderful. And ELA, great. I have all of those things. So, oh, and German, I got some German too. Okay, so we'll make sure that we try to cover lots of things so that you all leave here today, and 5-6, so some elementary as well. Good. So here, while you guys are finishing putting that in there, I'm going to paste this in the chat so you don't have to type it. It is a bit.ly link, so if you can't use the shortener because it's blocked, I understand. We do that at NDE too. Let me know, and I'm happy to give everybody the long link. I'll put that in as well. That way you have it. So let me, all right, there you go. And I'll move this out of the way. This presentation is an open resource, which is what we're going to kind of talk about today, open resources and culture. And open means basically that it's yours to take and use. And if you need to use these slides to explain it to your fellow friends and share the resources, you're welcome to absolutely do that. And so it's just bit.ly. Remember, bit.lys are case sensitive. If you are trying to type it, the O, E, and the R and the C are all capitalized. Otherwise, just feel free to use the link, one of the two links that's in there. If you don't somehow get it, let me know, or let Stephanie know and she'll tell me. So we're going to use our chat a little bit today. Again, you can put your questions in for Stephanie, but I also want to kind of see and tell you a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So we are going to talk about what OER is. It stands for Open Education Resources, and some of you may have heard of that, but we'll talk about it in some detail. We'll talk about the benefits, why we have this hub that I'm going to share with you, and how you can use it. We're going to talk about Creative Commons license versus copyright. And yes, there is fair use that helps us with copyright. But the nice thing about this site is all the materials are open. So we don't have to worry as much about that, but we'll talk about those things. And then we're going to really spend most of our time exploring the hub and making sure you understand how to use it and can find things that fit your needs. And I'll share several things that I think might help get you started that you can take a look at. And then from there, we can we'll take your questions kind of midway through and at the end if you have any specific things that you're interested in knowing. So just to kind of help me know how much detail I need to give here, and be totally honest, it's okay if you're a 1, but I just want to know where would you rate yourself as far as knowing and understanding what OER is? Are you a 1, just kind of learning? You've heard it, the acronym. You might not even have known the words. I find myself, I use the acronym too much and not the words enough. Or 5, you're already teaching with OER, or you're creating OER, and you feel like you kind of got this. So I'll kind of try to gear my conversation to those levels. Wonderful. And it is new. So that's why I say, don't be afraid if you're a 1. Oh, wonderful, Danielle. We definitely haven't, especially the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic, haven't had a lot of time to get out and tell people about this. So I'm glad you're here and you're going to learn about it. And hopefully it excites you enough. You'll share it with some others and help me with some of this work. So yes, let me put that in there. There you go. It's the long link, but it'll still take you here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about OER, just a brief history. Believe it or not, OER started way back during the Obama administration. So it's been around a little while. And he had the Race to the Top grants. You probably remember hearing about that. And OER was a big part of that. And we had many districts across the whole country that kind of jumped in and started to work in this space. The closest to us being Liberty Public Schools in Missouri. So they are a totally open campus, and all of their curriculum is open curriculum. So they're deep inside that. But that's when it started, and there were grants given out, and there was lots of work in this space. And luckily, because of that, we all benefit from the fact that it has started, because now it's extremely robust. When we talk about open education resources, or OER, you'll hear it referred to OER most of the time. It just basically means these are materials for teaching and learning. And they reside in the public domain, which you've always had access to. And history teachers, I always find, are the most familiar with what does it mean if something's in the public domain. But it also includes some new resources that have an open license on them instead of a copyright. It doesn't mean there isn't a copyright, or if you make something and decide to share it freely in OER, that you aren't still the copyright holder. But what you're doing is overriding the rules of copyright by putting a license on your materials that say, look, if you just give me credit and do some other things, you can use this, improve upon it, make it your own, do whatever you'd like with it. And that's been kind of refreshing, because we can kind of collaborate from long distances away from one another. The other thing is the materials are meant to have very limited restrictions, so you can take them beyond the way that they're given to you. And we call that remixing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's basically what OER is, just a bunch of curriculum that you used to have to pay high dollars for, that now you can have for free. You don't have to pay for it. There's no charge. So that's kind of nice. There's benefits to this. First of all, it increases equity of education. It provides students with high quality educational materials that they may not have had access to before because their district could not afford them. And if you're familiar with Ed Reports is a curriculum rating company. Many of the things that they rate the highest are those things which are open. There's all sorts of math and English and resources. You know, they only vet so many at a time, but there's very many resources in English and math that have already been vetted that are completely open and free. So you can get the best quality English materials for your classroom, and you don't have to purchase it. They're ready to go, and you can just download them. In addition, you can update this content, right? So our world is changing daily, I feel like, every day. Things are changing out there. And the nice thing about OER is because it's digital and because it's open, you can modify everything to keep it up to date so that your materials don't become dated, which is really nice. You're also able to tailor them. So it doesn't take away your teacher's strengths, right? You still know your students best. You still know what they need. And so you can tweak everything to make it the best possible lesson for your students, which is really great. And then, of course, the obvious thing we would like people to do is then take the funds that they would have used to purchase expensive publications from publishers and take those funds and repurpose them into professional development to teach teachers how to use the materials with fidelity, how to find materials, how to distinguish what is high quality and what maybe is not quite as high quality, and those kinds of things, and instead improve upon the classroom in that way versus handing all of our precious money over to a corporation, right? So we can hold on to that. All right, so I guess I didn't put this in slideshow mode, sorry, because we're looking at my extra stuff. Anyway, there are 5 things that you can do with OER, okay? And we call these the 5 R's, but basically you can retain these things. So you can make your own copies, keep your own copies, edit your own copies. You can reuse them in a variety of ways. You can revise them, so you can adapt them, you can modify them, you can improve upon them, and then re-release them and give them to the next person. And so with each iteration, we get even more and more robust materials. You can also remix them, which means you can take a piece from one OER and combine it with maybe another OER to make a more complete lesson, unit, or whole course. And then the biggest thing is you can redistribute it all and share it with others and give it back out. So it's kind of that nice, you know, share it forward kind of material. The one thing that's the trickiest about this, because we're so used to having published materials, right? It comes and they're so very strict. Everybody likes to hang that nasty sign by the copier that says, you know, you can't copy that. It's going to be horrible. They'll come for you. And really, those signs are not valid. They're not even made by education or education attorneys. They were put together by those that are in the industry to protect music makers and things like that. And so it doesn't really apply to us quite as well. But the nice thing about a Creative Commons license is it simplifies it. I don't have to guess if the publisher or the writer minds if I use these test questions in my quiz. I know I can use these materials and I can feel very safe in doing so. And so that's really what's nice about moving away from this on all our documents to these. And I'll show you all of those so that you can see there are many licenses, and hopefully this will be just your first step into the foray of OER, but hopefully you'll keep continuing to grow and eventually make your own, and then you'll want to consider a license that you think best fits your needs as the writer. So as we look at the top of this, the top part is the public domain, right? So these are things that have been released since the beginning of time, they automatically, most of the time it's government publications, photos, historical things that have aged to such a degree that now they just have been released into the public domain. So their copyright essentially has expired, that kind of stuff. And there's tons of things. And I can't remember the last year we were on, but we're well into the 1900s with what materials are in the public domain now. From there down, those 6 icons indicate 6 different creative licenses. And I'll point out a couple of things to note. First of all, you as the user, this CC BY means you always have to get credit to whoever gave it to you and licensed it this way. So you can give credit a lot of ways. This PowerPoint that I gave you, you could just put it on the last slide. You could put it as a small blurb on the first slide. You could put it into the notes and just say, this was based off a slideshow that I shared with you. And my name should just continue as you bring it forward to stay on that, and for everybody that uses it, and they'll know where the original resource was, no matter how many times it gets reused or changed. That's on all 6 licenses. So no matter what, you are never going to lose that you were the originator, you were the original license creator. So that's kind of important to people. The backwards arrow, it looks like a backwards C, means share alike, which means if you see this, I'm giving you Creative Commons, you need to credit me and I need you to share it the same way moving forward. So you'll continue to share it with folks with that same exact license, which is nice because you can just copy paste. This $sign with the NC under it means that you cannot charge for these materials. So even down the road, no matter how much you modify them, if they started with me and I put on there, no charge can be placed on these. You can never sell these materials. That protects future people from being locked out of it by prices, right? So that keeps it free and out in the open repository where people can get it and use it. And you don't have to worry about somebody else making millions on your idea, because they would not be able to do that legally. This one here with the star, this is the one that we use most at the NDE and the ESUs. We talk to attorneys. You should always talk to attorneys, right? And they told us this is the best Creative Commons license for tax-based or school-based materials for a couple reasons. One, we use mostly tax dollars, federal, state, and local tax dollars to pay teachers and to pay for teacher work time to create resources and to pay for their contracts. And so therefore, we don't want to charge another Nebraska taxpayer or another US taxpayer more money for something that was built already using tax funds. In fact, any federal grant now, because of the Obama administration, does require that you release your materials open. So there's lots of grants out there, and if they kind of start at the federal level, they ask that you make all of the materials open. Again, because those funds were given freely for the purpose of this work, and they don't want people to be charged. Now, these bottom 2 are the least restrictive, and it's this equal sign with the ND, and that stands for no derivatives. So the reason we wouldn't call these OER is the whole purpose of OER is that you can make a derivative, you can make it your own, you can mix it, but if it has this ND on it, you can't. You can take it and use it freely. You can make as many copies as you want. You can still distribute it. You can still share it with others, but you can't add to it or subtract from it. Now, the reason that we, oh, sorry.
I'm cutting you loose, he said, but feel free to drop in if you get a sentence.
Okay, so anyways, so what that basically means is that we have some companies that really want to give their things out for free, like Khan Academy or CK12, but they have spent time, energy, and money to make it what they think is the highest quality. And they don't want people to remix it and make it what they would maybe consider lesser quality. And since their name is always going to be on it, it's always going to say this started with CK12. They want to make sure that you definitely keep the materials as they were given to you. Now, that doesn't mean in your classroom you can't add things or do some additional things. It just means on the digital materials themselves, you're not going to be able to modify them. So that's kind of how they work. Like I said, we mostly recommend if you work for a school district or are under a contract where you are paid to be a fourth grade teacher, and therefore everything you make as a fourth grade teacher belongs to your district, that you use this license on materials that you'd like to release out into the commons. Okay, so this is the OER Commons, and this is an actual link, so you don't have to go anywhere or you don't have to type the URL. I'm going to pop in there in a minute, but if you want to open the window, you're welcome to do so. This is the site that Nebraska uses. We have purchased a hub, and I'll tell you about what that is. And this is where I recommend you start your journey. And the whole purpose of this is it's a hub. It's a repository where we crowdsource everything, not just us, but all people across the world can belong to this OER Commons and share within this Commons. And it's great. You'll find all sorts of resources you can't read unless you know the language. So it's a wonderful place, but it's all there. You don't have to Google and then hope you find something of high quality. Those materials should be found inside here. Now, it's not to say everything that's great is in here, but this is probably going to be your best starting point. And then I'm going to give you a document that gives you some other places you could search that we know are high quality, because we do have a few states that aren't part of the Commons in terms of having a hub. So they're not in this site, but they built their own site from scratch, because it gives them some freedoms we don't have with this site. And they built it all out, and they're sharing, and everything is an open resource. It's licensed as such, and they want you to come get it and use it. But if you don't go to Michigan's OER site, it's called a microsite, you're not going to see it in our site. So I have a list of all of those. I'll share them with you. One other thing I want to point out, this is free. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but this is totally free. Your account is free. When you set it up, you just need a valid email because it keeps bots out. They just want to check that it goes back to a human. You can use your school email. You can use a personal email. What you can't do easily is change your email. So a lot of people, if they know maybe they're going to be only a couple more years where they're at and they may move, retire, or do other things, they may use a personal email to create an account, and that's okay. It's just, it's really difficult to change it, and you'll be saving a lot of things tied to that account, and getting it switched to a new one is difficult. Okay. Let's take a little look. Now I'm going to go to the site probably for the next few slides. So I'm going to pop out of here, and I'm going to actually go into the Commons site that I sent you to. And I'm going to show you just around a little bit. I'm zoomed way out. So let's see if we can zoom. There we go. That was a little tiny. Okay. So we're going to start right here with the Discover. So when you come in, you can see I am logged in. This probably says create an account or log in. You don't have to worry about that yet. You can look at things without having an account. So you can do that later. You will have to go to your email. It'll send you a link. You'll have to confirm your account. It's kind of similar to a lot of things that we do nowadays, where we try to keep out hackers and spammers and bots. But just to show you around, that was one of our main purposes today. I want you to know how to use this when we walk away today, because we have limited time and it's vast. So this is the Commons. The whole international world starts here. Under Discover, you're going to find resources, collections, which they have digital librarians that have put and grouped resources together by topics. And then you have providers like CK12, Khan Academy, the Smithsonian. And so we'll kind of look, I'll show you what that looks like. It's alphabetical. If you're wanting to see what the Smithsonian has in here, you can click. I'm going to talk more about them later. If you want to know what Khan Academy has, you can scroll and you can see the 3,700 different things that they have. Now, the number is the number of materials, but know this. This has 3,704 materials. Those could be all individual lesson plans. Those could be all year-long courses, right? We don't really know. Same thing with this one. This might only be 22 things. And I'm not sure where this comes from, but it could be 22 year-long courses, which is still a ton of materials. So don't let the numbers think it's maybe not, worth your while to take a look at it, because the resource itself could be huge. So that's one thing that I would mention to you as you're using this site. As I mentioned, collections come in these wonderful little rectangles with nice little pictures, and they're categorized by a theme of some sort. So they have put together an engineering collection so that, if you just go straight here, it's kind of like a refined search. All of these things are already all engineering things that could be used. And there's more of these. It'll take a minute to probably load up some more, but I'm going to move on just so you know where to find them. That's the important thing. And then if you're looking specifically by a content area, maybe you want only whole courses, you can refine a search this way too, and say, look, I just want to see the 2,000 courses that are in here. What are they and how could I use them? There's an algebra course, there's a French course, a Spanish course, a German course. There's all kinds of courses in here. And so I'll show you those materials. There's also textbooks. There's over 3,000 textbooks. Again, all languages, all content areas. So just keep in mind, subject areas are sorted kind of like by college terms. So if you're looking for world languages, you're going to find it under arts and humanities, and you're going to see world cultures and languages included. So you kind of have to, when you're looking at subject, think in terms of when you went to college, where were you spending all your time? So that will help you find what you're looking for. They don't use high school terms for a lot of the content here. All right, so that's the Discover tab, right? The next thing I wanted to show you, and I'm going to scroll a little bit, is hubs. So in here, in addition to all these wonderful Khan Academies and all these nonprofits, the Smithsonian and the government themselves putting wonderful things in here, states have purchased into this, and they're bringing their people and resources together to share. So there are state hubs like ours. We have a Nebraska hub. There are college hubs, which are very specific to post-secondary, and they have lots of materials and bring lots of things to the table. Then I mentioned there are nonprofit hubs like UNESCO and OpenStax. And then there's kind of this like-minded hub where a bunch of the National School Librarians Association created their own hub, and they gather and resource things. There is a STEM hub. So all things STEM will be found and curated by that group, but it's a national group that maybe has a national organization tied to it. And you do have to purchase a hub. They're very inexpensive. So our Nebraska hub is not very expensive, but you do have to purchase them. So this is linked as well. Since we're kind of following virtually, save you some time to go to our hub, but you can also find our hub from the main page. This button always takes you to the main page under here. And you won't see anything under My Hubs until you create an account and decide to join. But if you click on See All Hubs, you can see who's here, who is in this space. And you can see that Iowa is, and they labeled themselves AEA versus Iowa because it's like that old phone book trick, right? You get to the top if you start with an A, and their ESUs are called AEAs. So that's how they did that. We are under N for Nebraska because it seemed like the obvious choice. And so here is our hub. When you go to our hub, the way that a hub works is that we have control over this domain, right? And so we can kind of pick and choose collections, providers, and resources that we think best meet our definition of high quality, meet the needs of our schools, or we know are being used widely in our schools, like a Khan Academy. And so we include that. It helps us kind of show you what we've looked at. But it's not to say that if you're in the regular commons, that there's not great stuff out there. In fact, there probably is, because I work with the ESU on this, but there's very few of us that can keep up with this site. So they add things constantly, and we're always trying to make sure we stay on top of it, but it is easy to get behind. So when we get to searching, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, I'm going to show you how you can best find what you need. What are you going to find in here? Everything. I mean, it's unbelievable, the stuff. You'll find like a picture, a single thing, something small, maybe a primary resource that's a picture that with some historical significance, all the way to an entire course. When I typically look, I try to stick with the big stuff to start, because I'd rather get more in one search than just a single picture, because I might be there a while looking. Doesn't mean it's not worthwhile, but start with the biggest stuff and see if that helps you. And if it doesn't, then you can go down to like an individual lesson plan on a specific topic or something like that. But lots of stuff. When you create an account and you verify it in your email, and do check the spam, because depending on how your email's set up, your invitation could end up in your spam or junk, whatever you call your folder. But do check that. But once you approve your account and you get started, everything that you save is going to go into this My Items. And I'll show you mine here in a second. But that's where your things are going to go. And you can join groups and hubs and save things that way. But for the most part, I usually always save things that I need in the My Items. It's just an easier place to find it. And then we won't go over this, but later when you're playing, this tells you how to save to My Items. I'll show you My Items in a minute here. Let me flip over here. So here is My Items. And when you create an account, it's going to set this up for you. And you can create folders and collect things over here. And so you just click on New, you make a folder. You can see I have a few things that I use for training purposes. So I have things saved here. And so you can see I have some cultural relevance. I'm going to show you what I have in there in a minute. I have some world language. I'm going to show you some of those things. We have history, all kinds of wonderful things, but you can organize things, and it doesn't have to be by subject. It could be, you might call yours Unit 1, Supply and Demand, Unit 2, GDP. You know, you might have different names for different things, but it's for you. So make it work for the way you would like your materials sorted. I do recommend sorting though, because otherwise it just lays them all in here and then you just keep hitting load more and it just keeps loading. So I definitely recommend that you sort them, because otherwise, you might be searching a while. It can get really deep. So that's kind of what happens when you create an account and you can start to save. From there, finding content. So this is really important. This hub is huge, as I mentioned, and every time you click on the OER Commons link, it takes you out here. And when you're here, it's searching for every single thing that has been published. The only thing you can't see is if I'm working on something and I haven't published it yet, which you don't want it until I'm done with it anyway, because it's only half finished, right? So once something gets published, it's going to be here. And so you can search by subject, like I showed you earlier, arts and humanities, and go to world culture and find things. You can also search by topic. So I could actually look for supply and demand if I wanted something supply and demand. So lots of ways to search, but I want to show you something. So let's say I'm an algebra teacher. I always pick algebra because it seems like everybody at least has algebra somewhere at their school. So if I say I want algebra, I'm going to get 1,300 results. That's a lot of things, especially if one of them's a textbook with like 22 units of things to look at. So it's a lot. You can further refine it over here. So if I only want high school algebra books, I can refine it and it'll be a little bit smaller. If I want to get rid of high school because my kids are really smart and maybe a community college or lower level college level would work, I can take that off and it'll go back. But I want to show you the same difference. I'm going to search for algebra in my Nebraska hub. So notice we have 1,328 things. I'm going to wait for it to load up my hub here. Come on. Kind of slow. We were just there. All right. Well, I'm going to go, I guess, the long way. I don't know. This worked just a second ago. So let me.
While you're looking for that,
Yes.
there's a couple of questions in the chat we'll bring back later. But one of them is how students then access these materials. And the other, and this is coming from OPS, and I'm sure I know what she's thinking. Could you choose a different language with algebra? We do have dual language instruction.
Yeah, you can. You can. There are Spanish materials for algebra in here. It's not obviously as robust as we would like it to be, but yes, you're right. And as students, it works the exact same way it works for you, which is why a lot of the resources, when you're looking at like a textbook, you're going to have to email the author to get the answer keys, because we recommend you do not put the answers in this site, because anyone in the world can go here, including your students, and they're clever. They'll figure it out at some point. So a lot of times there's an answer key book that you just email the person and they'll send it to you when you verify your credentials as a teacher. So great questions. Well, this finally loaded. I don't know why it was slow, but I want to show you. So we had 1328 was our number of algebra if we just did a general search of the hub. And like I said, every day things are getting added to this hub. And so it's really hard to keep up with. We in Nebraska have identified 815 of those 1,300 that we know are matched to our Nebraska standards, are high quality, enough that they're worth your while, that kind of thing. So just know that you might find fewer things if you become a member of the Nebraska Hub. Don't feel like you can't search out here for the newer things. In fact, a lot of foreign language stuff is really new. That's kind of a hot area. Do students need to create an account? No, they can access everything without it. You can share anything that you get from here without them even needing an account. It will link to your LMS. It will link to Google Classroom, and it can also provide you hyperlink that just opens in a window. So they don't really need to ever come to the site, but it's not to say they wouldn't find it. So yeah, you're welcome. So lots that can happen in here. Okay. So that's searching. I just wanted to make sure you knew that because I don't want you to short yourself on resources, right? Get as much as you can, but know that if you go to somebody's state hub, they will have done some narrowing down. Again, it doesn't mean that those other things aren't great. It just means nobody from the states had a chance to look at it. So just FYI. I showed you on searching, you can remove, if you change your mind, you don't want just high school, you can redo your search at any given time. All right, let's get into resources because we're getting short on time, and I want to still make sure that we leave some time for questions. So definitely want to show you these resources. Now, if we don't get to all of them and we don't get very deep in them, no, they're all linked to this presentation, and I'll paste it again because I know some of you have had to hop in and out. I'll paste the link again at the end of our time so that you for sure have it and have a copy. So let's kind of just take a look, and I'll tell you kind of what these things look like. Okay. So first thing, Basel. So this is English. The Basel readers are for younger students usually. There are Basel readers that have been used throughout time in English, and there are lesson plans tied to very common Basel reader materials. So if you go to this link, it's going to open those resources. There are 111. Now, I have not read any of these books because I am much too old to have this, but you may be familiar with some of these titles, but there are 111 different Basel readers that somebody took the time to make a wonderful lesson plan that ties to that reading. And so if you just click on it and click on view the resource, it's going to load up. And, oh, no, this one actually opens as a doc. So it went to the bottom of my screen. Some of them, they do that. They'll just download the lesson plan for you. So I'm going to bring it onto the screen so you can see it. I can grab hold of it here. All right. Well, it really does not want me to grab hold of this. I got too many windows open. Hold on just a second. Okay. Come on, here we go. All right, so here it is. This is the plan. It was created by the Columbus district. Who knows which Columbus, there's a million of them. But it's been created. It was part of a big national Basel reading project that somebody did at one time. It's a lesson that takes 3 to 4 days. Evidently, week 5 is when this Basel reader, they're ready for this level of reading. Here's some Common Core. Now in Nebraska, we don't call our standards Common Core, but we do have a lot of crossovers. So just check our documents to see what these match to that are NDE standards. And then it just details. Here's what you do before you teach. Here's what you do while you're teaching. Here are the questions and the page numbers that match up whatever kids are supposed to be reading and thinking about. Here's the vocabulary. And it goes on and on. Many of these lessons, like I told you, it'll count as one thing, but sometimes this is 3 to 4 days worth of lesson plans for you. So you could get through a week almost with just this one thing. And there's lots of details, and they explain what Basel readers are and all of those wonderful things. So that's just kind of an example of what you're going to kind of find. I also linked their website. There's some math materials that go, they're obviously not Basel readers, but there's some basic math materials that you can also go there. But I knew we weren't going to have a lot of math teachers, so I just linked it. There are also under humanities, the National Endowment for the Humanities put all of their resources in the hub. And so you can go to our Commons site, and it's going to go ahead and pull all 370 of them for you. But you can take a look. A lot of this is going to be historical. I know we have a history teacher on here, and it's going to go through different areas. There's even advanced placement. We haven't talked about leveling, but there are courses that run the gamut for the type of learner you might be working with, whether it's a special education student or whether you're working with advanced students who need to be challenged. And so you can check these materials out. The other thing I would mention is sometimes if you put in by grade level, let's say you say, I want to search for 9th and 10th. In some states, that might be an 11th grade standard. So you're going to want to be careful with being real specific. You might want to just do high school and see what you get. Because you might find that maybe something that's taught to the freshmen of Nebraska is actually a sophomore level class in the state that you're looking at. So do keep that in mind. Most of the time they tag it, so it shows multiple grade levels, but you can look at these. You can also go to the site. I went ahead and linked the EdCitement site. Okay, so University of Kansas, you guys probably know this, but I linked it. They have tons of materials for world languages. And they also have other less popular languages that they provide materials for. But they do have full courses. They're working on this Acesso site. They're updating it. So there's going to be a bunch of new materials with that. That's a Spanish course. If you want to click on that, I have some more Spanish. So, and we're getting low on time, so I'm going to keep going. But take a look, tons of stuff there. And most of it I can't read. So that's why I'm like, we won't open it because I won't be able to read it to you anyway. 10th grade English, there is a whole course, a whole year long. Again, even if you teach 9th grade, you may want to look at it. There may be crossover, but this teacher spent a lot of time making very detailed year-long course in there. And I will open a couple of these, but we're getting short on time, so I want to make sure I don't keep you too long. Speaking of culture, now there are a couple of sites in here. This one goes to the OER. It's called the 100 People site, a world portrait. And so if you take a look at it, it's got some great videos. There's a map, so there's some geography that can be tied to this. The lessons are all built out. But if you're studying, something from Europe, there's a video on Europe. But there's a lot of videos and like interviews with people from other countries. So it's kind of a really neat site to check out. And then this also relates, there's another site that has a ton of just geography stuff. So if you're interested in that. Boise State also has a ton of foreign language. Their Let's Chat resources look really cute and they're fairly up to date and they look like they're fun. They have those in 3 languages, French, German, and Spanish, but they do have some Chinese. Much less a textbook than it is more like just about the Chinese culture, and it ties to a lot of things. But then they have other resources besides the Let's Chat that you could check out. There's like 15 of those year-long courses. Then there's some more Spanish. In case you didn't get enough Spanish, there's a Spanish 101 and 102. Then there's this beginning Spanish. These are for high school students through college, students who maybe do not have not had any past background in Spanish, because it does start at the beginning. It's like Spanish is the one language I know enough to be dangerous in. So I did look at this. This is a Canvas course. So you could put it in your LMS, but you can also export and take things out of here if you should choose to. But they have everything, like it just goes on and on. You can also just use it to get ideas. This is an actual textbook. So it opens, as you would expect, like a textbook. And the first thing they tell you, I think this is a good sign. When they tell you right away, this is going to be huge, it may crash your browser. You might want to just download this gigantic textbook. But you can always look at the details and learn a little bit more about what it is. It's for students 11th through 12th and undergrads. So lots of Spanish. Then there's Chinese, because we don't want to leave anyone out. There's some Chinese, there's elementary Chinese 1 and 2, and elementary does not mean elementary grades. It means basic Chinese. And I did look at these materials. Even basic Chinese was a bit much for me. So it breaks it down. It goes through each character. It does a lot. You definitely need a teacher for those materials. Then there's some German. In addition to the Let's Chat German, there is a German 101 course and textbook that you can use with high school students. Now the Smithsonian, they just redid their whole site. So just FYI, check it out. So, especially if you're a history teacher, so much stuff there, but there are resources in the Commons. I want to get you these other materials, right? So this document is going to show you those microsites. You are not going to find these resources in the OER Commons Hub I just shared with you. You're going to find them out on the internet, but I've taken the time to find them for you so you don't have to spend so much time. These are search terms I would use if I was a world language teacher in the Commons. That's the first page. And then on the second page, these are other states that have world language materials that are not in our hub. And then this is just a ton of other culture and language materials. So that's linked in our slideshow. Take it. And I have several others linked here. Social studies, I linked one for them. Same thing. It's just the same document, but with social studies. And then here's the English one for our English or language arts teachers. I have one for every area in the state of Nebraska. So if I missed your area, email me. I'm going to show you my email again in a second, and I will send you the link via email. So just FYI. And then I think this is just some other, just check these out. They're on those sheets, but these are some really great sites specific to cultural relevance and materials around culture. Some of them I thought you'd know, like you've probably all heard of Corel, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But definitely check these out. There is some second language studies you were asking about. Are there materials for algebra in Spanish? Yeah, this is probably a really good site to start with, but there are others if you search in the hub. And now we have 4 minutes left for questions. So if you want to unmute, I'll stop sharing. While you're talking, I will put the links back up for everybody as well, but feel free to either send in the chat a question or shout it out. I'm okay with either way. Find my links here.
We did have a question about the world language OER and how someone could contribute to those materials.
So great question. You can add your materials inside the hub. I'll quick share. There's the bit.ly link for the presentation, but let me just do a quick share because I can show it to you. It's super easy. Just remember, everything has to be open, so no copyrighted materials. But basically, all you do is click on, once you make an account, you do have to make an account to do that, and you'll get this Add OER. Oh, I lost you, Stephanie, you're muted.
You're sharing screen, you may not want to.
Oh, can you see the screen?
I can see an email screen.
Oh, wrong screen. Sorry, I was trying to show you on the actual site. Let me try that again. My email is boring. Okay, there you go. Here, it's right here. So once you create an account, you'll get this Add OER button. And there are some resources in here that'll tell you about how to create OER, how to build it and things. But you just literally click here and say, I want to make something. And bam, it lets you type it in. You can copy paste, you can upload Word documents and Google Docs. So great question. And then I'm going to give you a non-bit.ly link because if you're like me, you need a non-bit.ly link. I do know how to cheat that, but I'm not supposed to tell people I know how to get around the firewalls. But if we're ever in a private meeting, let me know and I'll show you how to do it. There you go. There's the long link to the presentation. And again, keep a copy, have it, do whatever. It's yours. Use the links, check these out. If you have questions, just email me. I'm happy to answer any questions. We are going to be beefing up now that, well, knock on wood, hopefully COVID is, under control more and people won't be so tired and exhausted. And we will start to offer more training on how to make OER and details. And we usually do it by content areas. So that way we can just focus on, one language, one area, or one grade level.
Can we put your email address in the chat?
Yeah, so let me do that. It is on the last slide, so I'm going to copy paste. All right. Yes, thank you for that. I don't want to forget. That's very important. You can't get it in touch with me. And it's on the last slide as well if you bookmark the slideshow. Anything else? No, we have 1 minute.
Well, I will go ahead and conclude and say thank you very much. The feedback in the chat has been tremendous. Overwhelming, wonderful, amazing amount of resources. So thank you very much, Dorann. To everybody who is here, I will tell you that we have another meeting coming up next Thursday, the 7th, and you are also welcome to join us on that one. It will be at 3 o'clock as well. Dr. Stephen Duke, who was our first presenter and unable to present due to an emergency in the family, will be there to start things off on Thursday, and I'll be following up with a look at how you take all of these pieces and put them into a curriculum. So that being said, the series continues. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time and have a good afternoon.